What's going on YouTube? This is Mark with Waist Deep Wade Fishing, Southwest Florida. Big shout out to everybody out there on the grass flats, everybody tuning in, everyone that's liking, subscribing, and sharing to the channel. Hats off to you, and guess what? The weekend is here. But before you get out on the water this weekend, I have a couple of topics I want to dive right into and discuss. I've had a couple of questions that have come across to me in my comments in regards to what type of soft plastics do you use in certain situations on the grass flat in regards to water depth, grass, potholes, mud, time of day, type of jig, type of keel weighted hook. So today we're going to cover all those subjects. So the first thing I want to do is just put up the differences. This is what the first option that you have as far as soft plastics to go weedless. This is a Mustad grip pin, 1/8 of an ounce, keel weighted weedless jerkbait hook. As you can see, completely weedless. Okay, there's a time and a place for this. And this is Old Faithful. This is a Rockport Rattler, 1/4 ounce. It's got a rattle in it that imitates a clicking shrimp. Fantastic bait. I've caught some of the biggest redfish, out there on this particular jig head with the DOA Cal Shad 3.5s. So, it's an older style soft plastic, but you know what? DOA stands, do you know what DOA stands for? Deadly on everything. There's a reason why it's been around so long and why it's so effective. So that's what we're going to do today. We are going to discuss the differences between this bait and this bait, when and why to use this bait, and when and why to use this bait. So stay tuned, guys. Hopefully this is going to be helpful for you when you're out on the water in those shallow flats. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's jump right into it. And we'll go ahead and start with the keel weighted hook. So first thing is first. A lot of people have asked me, well, how do you rig it? How do you do this? So I'm going to do it for you real quick. It's simple. This is a 4-inch DOA jerk shad in the watermelon and red flake. And what you want to do is grab the hook like so. Okay? Get your bait. Find out exactly the length, and then you want to grab your bait just like so, thread it through the nose, just like that, go up about 1 inch, push it through, bring it over the keel weight like so. Bring it up to the grip pin, just like this. And then you want to now once you have it up like this, you want to take the shank of the hook right here, bring your bait up, and match your thumb to it. Okay? Let me show you this way. So you see where the hook comes right out. Okay? Well, that's where you want your hook, the bottom of that shank, to pierce. So you put your thumb there. I know that it's right there. Basically want to come through on the bottom. Now you want to make sure that it's directly centered. Otherwise this bait will helicopter, and you don't want that. So once you have it in, it's going to look something like this. Now, we were talking about making this bait weedless. Obviously, right now, this bait is not weedless, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to skin hook this bait. So we want to put the bait on just like so. All right, once it's on like that, and just barely put the skin of the lure on the tip of the hook. Now, once you have that, okay, it's completely weedless. As you can see, it's completely straight And that is the correct way to rig up a jerk shed on a Mustad Keel weighted hook. Now, I personally use a 1/16 of an ounce or a 1/8 of an ounce, depending on the depth. When we're in waters between 1 and 4 feet, a 1/16 of an ounce is great, and an 1/8 of an ounce is great. It's all preference. If you're using a bigger bait, this is a 4-inch jerk shad. If you were using, let's just say, a 5 to a 6-inch jerk shad, I would go up to go down to a 1/16 of an ounce. Because like this jig is gonna sink head first. This bait, now you have the grass here, is gonna be flowing like this and sinking this way. The jig head is gonna sink this way, the keel weight is gonna sink this way. So now let's talk about when is the best time for us to use this bait. Well, what I've learned is preferably if you're on a shallow grass flat, okay, with potholes, and you're fishing between 1 and 3 feet of water, and it's fairly clear water. If it's muddy, I would lean more towards the jig head, but we'll get into that in a moment. If you have semi-clear water with a lot of grass, okay, this jig head is not going to be effective, okay? It's going to dive into the grass, it's going to get hooked, you're going to be constantly pulling turtle grass off your line, eel grass off your hook, it's going to wrap up the lure, it's just going to be a pain. With this lure, in that particular situation, you could swim this lure with the simple reel, pop, pop, reel, pop, pop, and this bait is going to swim, pop, pop, and then instead of diving right back down into the grass, it's going to slowly sink and stay in the strike zone longer. And that's what you want. Obviously, you want your bait in the strike zone as long as possible so that trout, redfish, or snook sees this swimming by. You know, you cast this out, that snook or sea trout or redfish is sitting in that pothole. This comes flying by over the pothole, he comes up and he grabs it. Now, I don't use this particular bait often. I use it when I'm on a particular flat. Now, if I'm fishing for trout in water 3 foot or more, we're going to get away from this bait. So basically, if you want to stay in 1 to 3 feet of water and you have lots of grass, if you have oyster bar that you're running over, that you want to throw your shad over, excuse me, if you want to throw the jerk shad over and you don't want it to get caught on oyster, you don't want to get broken off, you don't want it to snag the bottom, and you want it to stay completely weedless, this is a very, very effective bait to use. Now, wintertime, I don't really use this that often. I'm hunting big trout, and, I'm going to be in a deeper flat, throwing top waters. I'm going to be throwing corkies. But for summertime, when you've got those larger baits, 4, 5-inch baits, the 4 or 5-inch jerk shed in ultra shallow water, nothing can beat it. It's one of the best and most effective lures to use in that 1 to 3 foot range when you have lots of grass and lots of oyster. So moving on. The next lure and jig we're going to talk about is the Rockport Rattler. And, hold on, let me grab my box here. There's 2 particular baits I like to use. The Rockport Rattler, okay, which is a very, very, very effective jig. It's probably one of the best out there. And then you have the Texas Rattler. Now, the only difference between the two, actually, there's 2 differences. One, the Rockport Rattler has a hook right here, okay? And that hook basically is a bait keeper. It's there to keep the lure in place. But what happens is once that lure gets tugged and pulled, it's going to pull through the bait and it's going to destroy it. Unlike the Texas Rattler, where there is no hook. They have a proprietary locking system, as you can see right here, where once the bait goes on, it can freely slip off. The only problem with that is it slips off. Okay, it doesn't stay on 100% of the time. It's a great jig head, but you do have to, fiddle with it a little bit, as you're jerking the bait, especially if you're jerking real hard and, you're pop, 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 and then letting it sing pop, 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 pop. The bait does occasionally slip down, but that's the only downside to that bait. Whereas this bait, it doesn't slip, but, 2 good hits, your bait is, you're gonna have to change your soft plastic. Whereas this, you can catch 5, 6, 7 fish on one soft plastic without that soft plastic being damaged. The other thing I wanted to talk about with these jig heads is this jig head has a subtle rattle, whereas this jig head has a very, very pronounced rattle. Again, both great. I use both of them, so that's why I'm talking about both of them. So situations. The next thing we want to do, I'll show you how to rig it. So what you want to do here, okay, you want your soft plastic. You'll always want the paddle tail facing down. Never want it up like that. You want it facing down, okay? So put your paddle tail up to the lure. As you can see, the hook, the shank of the hook comes out right there. Mark it with your thumb. Thread the lure on, and of course you want it centered. You always want it centered. Pull the hook through. Slide your bait up. Now again, see, that's what you don't want, okay? When it's not put on correctly and it looks like that, that bait will be completely ineffective. So let's try that again. Try that one more time and get that on the correct way. All right, so we're gonna put it through here. We wanna make sure it's centered. There we go. And then of course, once you've got it centered, it should look just like that. And that is going to, when worked correctly, is going to swim. That paddle tail is going to be kicking, and you're going to pop it, and it's going to go pop, pop, and then it's going to sink straight down and sit on its head like this. Pop, pop, and then sink straight down and sit on its head like this. Now the time and the place where you want to use this, basically you can use it all year round, but you want to use this particular jig head in anywhere from 3 to 7 feet, 3 to 7 feet deep, through the potholes, of course, through the grass, just swimming it across the grass in the strike zone. But this particular lure, is made for, you guessed it, water that's waist deep. And it comes in, DOAs, down south lures. There's tons of paddle tails out there. There's tons of colors out there. My favorite colors, white with the silver flake, green, watermelon, chicken on a chain, purple and chartreuse, white chartreuse, red with a chartreuse tail, purple with a chartreuse tail, black with a chartreuse tail. There's tons of colors. There's tons of videos out there, on my channel that are going to describe what colors to use at what particular time of the year and what time of the day and what tide. But getting back to the subject of these two. Again, I want to rehash. This bait, the Keel weighted bait, is for water from 1 foot to 3 feet, lots of grass, oysters, or if you're kicking it under mangroves and you're trying not to get snagged. I don't beat the bushes a lot. I like to stay on the grass, but when it is time to throw a lure up under the mangroves and into the bush, this is the lure I'm going to throw. Now, you can rig a soft plastic on a keel weight hook. A paddle tail on a keel weighted hook. I just don't like to. You know, that's personal preference. It is what it is. So I hope today you got a good understanding of when to use a keel weighted weedless hook and when to use a jig head. There are certain times and certain places, and if you use these in the wrong times and the wrong places, they're going to be very ineffective, and they're going to be disrupting to your fishing, and chances are you're probably not going to catch a lot of fish. So I hope you can take this information that I shared with you today and use it for you out there this weekend. Get yourself a trout, a redfish, a snook, a tarpon, whatever it may be. Again, my name is Mark with Waist Deep Wade Fishing, Southwest Florida. I love you all. Thank you very much for liking, subscribing, and sharing. Let's keep this thing going, and I will see you out in the water. Make sure you get out there and get yourself a yellowmouth.